We're going to add different types of gems onto our game. Create a new tileset. Select collection of images. Name the tileset gems. Select the settings wrench. You'll see a new blank window after selecting the settings wrench. Copy a 32 by 32 pixel tileset onto the blank panel. I'm using the tileset from kynos.itch.io. You can now save the map, and all of these 32 by 32 pixel gems will be available to place onto the game map. Create a new purplish pink object layer called gems. This is for collision. With the gems object layer selected, select a single gem from the tile sheet and place it on the map using the image placement. The gems will be removed when Leena collides with the gem. Initially, we'll use these as a form of points. So remember that Leena can jump, she can do a kick flip. And also remember that the mushrooms are non-movable, meaning that they can't be penetrated. So place some of the gems around for her to get different types of points per the challenge that you want in your game. If these are objects, we're going to have to read in this data for the individual rectangles of the object that's created from the image tile. But because it's objects, we're going to create a new gem.dart component under the actors. So in our world organization, the gem is one of the actors because there's interactivity with it, even though the gem is not a person. We're going to extend the position component initially, and then we're going to convert it to a sprite component. So you could actually extend it sprite component right now. Apply the mix-in with collision callback. This is new in the Flame 1.1 version. This tutorial uses Flame 1.1.1. The terminology changed. The collision callback is what we're going to use to eventually remove the sprite, the gem, from the game when the player, Leena, collides with the gem. To enable collision, we're going to enable add a hitbox onto the gem component. This is also new in Flame 1.1. The new technique is to add a hitbox, and in this case, we're just using rectangle hitboxes. We're using a position component because it doesn't require a sprite component. And initially, we're just going to read in the data from the map and print out the x coordinate. So we'll add a rectangle hitbox, which you can add to a position component. And then within the main.dart, this is where we're going to read in the map data and then form the components that we're going to add to the system. To get the list of objects, I'm using the new getLayer method. I think this was new in Flame 1.1. I think from 1.0, I was actually using getObjectGroup by layer. And then when you use getLayer, you have to put the object group type in these angle brackets. And that is actually part of the tiled package. Make sure that the word gems in this case is actually in your map.tmx file. So the map I'm using is actually called map2.tmx, and it has to match that word gems there on line now 51. That's a string. That has to be the same identifier that's in the map2.tmx. So once you load up this gem group, you can iterate through it. And so I'm going to create a variable that I specify on line 53, which is the word gem. So this is something that I'm just creating right now within this loop. But each of these objects will be stored in this variable gem that I'm creating within the loop. So from each gem, I can now grab the data for this specific gem that's on the map screen. And the data is going to be things like the X and Y coordinate, the size of the gem. Initially, we'll treat all the gems the same. However, in the future, we're going to change the graphic and maybe the characteristics depending on what type of gem it is. To prepare for this step, I'm simply going to delete the spaces from the file name that's stored within my assets/images/gems folder of my project. So these graphics names that I'm editing, they're actually in my Flutter project right now. I'm going back to the map and I'm going to select each of the gems and I'm going to put the type of the gem to be the same as the existing file name. So ruby or cut ruby or sapphire. This is in the properties of the individual gem. If you don't have it, go into view and then select the properties so that it shows up in your tiled editor. I'm going to select identifier for each of the gems on the map. And that identifier is going to be the same as the file name. We're just using the identifier as a string so we can differentiate between something like a ruby or a topaz. In the future, we'll add a switch statement so that we can change the graphic from within a loop. So when we populate it within the Flame game, we'll check to see what type of type the gem is, and then change the graphic or the sprite that we load from the local storage. At this stage, we're just setting up the identifiers so that in the future, we can then make that change of the individual gem. In the first stage, when we go back to the code, we just want to print out the type. And then in the future after that, we'll probably just set a single gem type, like for example, ruby or sapphire or emerald, just to get the game going. But then in the future after that, we'll have some type of switch statement to switch between the different types of gems. In the main.dart file, all we're going to do is actually print out the gem.type first, just to make sure that this new property that we added to the gem is working. To prepare for the graphics to load from the local storage, we have to add that subdirectory. We have our gems in a subfolder off of images and gems. So we need to add this to the pubspec.yaml file. When I tried to run it, there were some errors in the file name. So I opened up the map.tmx file and I manually deleted the space from the map file, which I had previously saved. So I actually saved it with these spaces in there. And I think there was a typo in, I think I spelled emerald wrong in one of the types. So I just ran it and then checked to make sure that it could find all these tiles in the map file when I ran the game. You can just look at the error message and it'll say that it can't find it. And it's because in this case, I had the name of the actual graphics file was wrong, right? Because when I saved it originally in tiled, it took it with the file name with the space in it. Then when I tried to run it again, it had another error that I had misspelled emerald. This error is actually when I put the type in, I just typed the wrong key. Oftentimes these error messages in the debug console, they provide quite useful insights into where the source of the error is. A lot of these errors when you're programming are just typos, or it's unrelated to your knowledge of Dart or Flutter or Flame. It's just you typed in the wrong thing, or there's a space in your file name. I'm going to pass the tiled object data over to the gem at the time of instantiation. So I'll pass it over as a property of the gem class when I call it up from within main.dart. So we'll set up the constructor to require this variable tiled object, and that will have the data for the x and y coordinate. We'll have the gem type, the position as well. Initially, I'll just have it print out the tiled object type from within the onload method of the gem.dart file, so that when the gem loads, we can just make sure that it actually found the right type. We're not going to use that information right now. We're using the future to try and change the gem graphic based on the gem type. Right now, I'm just going to load a Ruby or some other graphic. In order to test the game at this point. And then in the future, I'll set up some additional game logic or some logic to sort through that, what type of gem it is, and then based on that, change the sprite to load. I used a similar technique in the George tutorial to change the type of baked goods in that game. So in the previous game, we would switch between the chocolate cake or I think there was cheesecake and those type of things. So in this game with Leena, we're going to switch between the different gems. And initially, the gems will have the same value or the same points. However, with different types of gems, you could have different types of challenges. And maybe some of the gems are not good. Maybe they're negative points. The important part here is to be able to pull out these things like gem.x, gem.y. So this is all in the map file, right? This is the main point here. And then to actually place it, we have to subtract the height of the gem on line 58. All right, let's test it out. The background green tree portion layer is not in this map file. It's simply because I only dechecked it to make it not visible so we could focus in on these the mushrooms, which I hope the mushrooms and the gems, which I hope CodeBaker1 likes, because it took me a long time to resize those mushrooms. But I guess they are pretty cute, and the rubies seem to work. So if you want the background trees, all you do is check on that thing. It looks like a little eye to make it visible. I just wanted to have a better look at the gem placement here. You kind of imagine that we are going through it, and are they accessible? Like, can I actually jump and get these gems? Or hopefully your reflexes are better than mine. I'm really struggling here. Okay, so in the next video, we'll make these things collidable and remove it. Subscribe to the channel for updates on the more than 50 videos I've made on Flame. The videos with source code are also available for free on Teachable, 100% free course if this is a hobby. In whatever way you choose to learn, make sure you have fun and unleash your creativity. Have a fantastic day.